Hey, friends. Here's a little March of the Pips walkthrough. This will probably be pretty quick. This is a deck I bought many years ago and got rid of pretty quickly because it was a Pip deck. And I was like, no thank you. And now I'm like, yes, please. This is sort of I think it's out of print, but I literally paid like $10 for it, and you can probably find it for less. It's the Barnes and Noble Tarot, and actually I really like it, and I don't know, the crazy part of me that got rid of it way back when, but I thought I would share this. So I found it on eBay. It was super duper cheap. The book that comes with it is actually by John Dee, who I think is a relatively well-known cartomancy writer. He has a book on playing cards, and other sort of Lenormand-esque systems, and other systems. And the artist Sandra Barker, Shirley Barker, I apologize. Shirley Barker, I'd never really heard of before. But I really, really like this deck. So it's available online. It used sites and various permutations. And I like it. So I thought I would just sort of share it with you. It came in this giant... This is exactly what I remember when I got it, 100 years ago. It looked like this. And it's a lift-off top box. And then within the box is the deck of cards and the book. And the book, it's a brief book, you know what I mean? But I think it's a decent introduction to the system, and it's full colored, and there's spreads, and all the cards are there. And then the deck itself comes in this little box. And that's the back of the card. Now, it would bug me that this is the Six of Swords if the Six of Swords in this deck actually look like that, but it does not. So I actually kind of like that the back of the deck is this sort of like homage to Marseille. Because this is Marseille style, as I talked about in my last video, but it is not a straight up Marseille deck. So let's zoom in. And we'll just adjust the light. Ooh, that's not the way we want to adjust it. We want it to look easy to see and clear. All right. So, I'll go through this pretty quickly. This should actually be a pretty brief video, but I quite like the art style of this deck. It lives somewhere between Marseille and sort of Pip decks, with like tips of the hat to Rider-Waite-Smith and Crowley to what's that deck's called? The Toth deck. So here's the Fool, and the art style I think is just really great. I mean, that's sort of the thing about this deck that I really liked a lot, was just the sort of goodness of the art style. I think it's got a tip of the hat to that engraved woodblock, but it has like a looseness to it that I actually think is really nice. So here's the Fool. No dog, you know what I mean? This is more of a jester, but not bad. The cardstock, I will say, is really thin, but that always sort of makes for a nice shuffle. So, but I mean, it's on the edge of paper thin. So here's the Magish, and he's a little more sort of like skoshing over to the edge of Rider-Waite-Smith, but with the lemniscate and the magical implements on the table. I sort of love that he's got like I think that's a dog, like a pooch, just chilling on his table there, like, or is it a monkey? I really can't tell. But that's the Magish. Now the Popus and the Pope, the Papist and the Pope are High Priestess and High Priest, so again, very RWS. But there's just sort of like a loveliness to the art style that I like. This Empress I've always really liked, and you can get, you definitely have a nod to Rider-Waite-Smith here in that there's this sense of a pregnancy. There's a sense of like fecundity there. But the colors are really nice, and there's just sort of like a gentleness and like a class to this deck. Here's the Emperor. Again, really rich colors, sort of love there's like an aura around him that I think is really interesting. You've got Aries, you know what I mean? So you've got nods again to Pamela Coleman Smith's iteration, the High Priest. No acolytes, no sort of in front of him, but again, you get a High Priest there. You get I actually like the Papist and the Pope a lot. But you know, interestingly, in a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, this would be Hierophant, and it's not. So. Lover's card is absolutely Rider-Waite-Smith. There's no Marseille influence here whatsoever, other than potentially the art style and the Cupid, rather than, you know, Gabrielle or whoever the angel is in the story. Here's the Chariot. Strength. The Hermit. So this kind of reminds me of like linoleum block print art. I think that's sort of what this feels closest to. Wheel of Fortune, very Rider-Waite-Smith. Justice. The Hanged Man. Death. Temperance. The Devil. There's just something about the art style about this. Like, this was such a cheap deck. You know, the price tag on this actually says $9. So I think I paid $1 or two more for like a used out of print edition than it actually cost at the time. But, you know, it's just a good one. It actually reminds me of another deck that I can't place the name of. That's also out of print. And that it's like a pip deck, but that has really promising trumps and really disappointing pips. The Star, the Moon. I like the Moon. The Sun. There's your traditional creepy baby. Judgment. And the World. So, you know, in the trumps, there's like nothing revolutionary. And then we get into the pips. Now, the minors, only, you know, by and large, this is a pretty pip-ish deck. The Suit of Swords, as you'll see, is weirdly very close to Rider-Waite-Smith. Which is fine, because the suit that mostly bugs me in Rider-Waite-Smith is the Suit of Swords. And again, when I say bugs, that's just a personal thing, right? It's not an, you know, indictment of the deck. It's just taste-wise, so... this is not Marseille style swords. This is, but as we go along, we get a very different sort of energy, which I really quite like. So this 4 has a Marseille energy, the 5 has a Marseille style. But see, this would be the 6 traditionally, and here's the 6 in this version. So while this is the 6 of Swords, you know, it doesn't bug me because it's not actually the 6 of Swords in the deck. So 7. So again, you know, like if the Marseille construction sort of bugs you, but like a pip deck doesn't, this, you know, this might be something worth looking for. And again, I don't think this is hard to find. I don't think this is rare. There's the 10. And here we get into the quartz, and the quartz are pretty Rider-Waite-Smith in their energy. You know, that butterfly right there is right out of Pamela Coleman Smith's art. There's the king. So I think now we're getting into the wands, and the wands are the most kind of illustrative. They're the most situational, which is the term I've adopted for Rider-Waite-Smith decks in that model, or decks in the model of Rider-Waite-Smith. So here, you know, here, for example, there's no people, but you get a very, very, if you're familiar with Rider-Waite-Smith, you know sort of what you're looking at. And you get a similar energy here. So for some reason in the Suit of Wands, you get a very close, although people-free energy around. So there's someone in the 5. I think this may be the one person in the whole series that I can think of. Now this is interesting because it's the 6 and it looks a lot like the 4 of Wands from Rider-Waite-Smith. 7, very Rider-Waite-Smith. 9, and then 10. So that's, that's an anomaly in this deck. Here we have the page, knight, queen, and the king. As we get into coins and cups, the coins have pentacles on them, but they're very Marseille style, as you can see. But there's a little there's flourishes, there's uniquenesses that are very different from Marseille in their way. So I find this deck really charming. I find it really classy. I wish that I had given it a chance. But then again, at that time I wasn't at that place. And I didn't know what to do with it. And it took me a long time. I mean, I would say, I remember, I think, getting this deck probably shortly after I started. I mean, is there copyright in the book? Oops. 1996. Yeah, I mean, I started reading probably 97 or 98. So I probably got this around that time. Here's the sort of Rider-Waite-Smith energy, although it's not a Rider-Waite-Smith image. 9. And then 10. And then the knight, page, queen, and king. And then finally we get into the suit of cups. So again, there's it's Marseille style, but the embellishments, the arabesques as they're called, are a little different. The energy is a little different. The coloration very clearly is different. Oddly, the cups in their way are the most simple, and they tend to often be very sort of decorative. The page, knight, queen, and king. So let's zoom out and let me just shuffle this. Again, I don't sort of remember. It's, like I said, it's very thin cardstock. But, again, it actually, that actually means it shuffles really kind of nicely. Whoops. I really like the way this shuffles. I wonder if this deck was a case of sort of like you get what you pay for, and people were sort of mistrustful of the fact that it was like a $10 Barnes & Noble deck. Like, I wonder if that sort of did it in. But, I mean, their editions of books and classic texts have always been kind of top-notch. So I think that shouldn't, hold anyone against it. And again, it's really sort of a class act. So I'm just going to lay out a spread and just sort of look at it. Let's see if we can fit a 9 card. So, obviously I didn't shuffle all that well, but I think it's really nice. I really, really like it, and I will absolutely be using it. So that's just a quick look at the Barnes & Noble Tarot by John Dee and Shirley Barker, a very inexpensive deck from the late 90s that I believe is out of print, but I also believe is like super gettable for really reasonable costs. And I think it's classy and really nice. And I say boo to young me who gave it away, and yay to mature me who recognized its potential. So, happy March of the Pig.